So last time we talked about the film that almost won Best Picture at the Oscars last year, so I think it's only fair that we talk about the film that actually won for a little bit. The film that actually won Best Picture last year was Moonlight, but at the end of the day, how many people do you think saw La La Land and how many people saw Moonlight? There's probably a big difference. As I said last time, La La Land was the crowd favorite and the front runner to win, so that would make Moonlight the underdog in last year's Oscars race. So what's the story behind this underdog story? Moonlight was based on the semi-autobiographical play In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue by Terrell Alvin McCraney. Both McCraney and the film's director, Barry Jenkins, grew up in the same neighborhood in Miami, only a couple blocks from one another, but they never knew each other. It wasn't until a mutual friend shared McCraney's play with Jenkins that they would meet, connect, and eventually begin working on the film. This is only Barry Jenkins' second film, and he felt a very personal connection to McCraney's story, not only because he and McCraney both grew up in the same rough Miami neighborhood, which is also where the film was shot and where it takes place, but because his mother also had issues with drug addiction, and he also was very closed off in his youth. He kept his emotions and, to an extent, his identity bottled up for many years. The story is told in 3 acts, focusing on a different part in the main character, Chiron's life. We see him first as a child, then as a teenager, and finally as a young man in his 20s. Because of that, Chiron is played by 3 different actors, those actors being Alex Hibbert, Ashton Sanders, and Trevante Rhodes. These 3 never met once during production. Barry Jenkins stated he didn't want their performances to influence one another, hoping they would develop the character on their own terms. In every respect they did, but it's amazing, but you can still see the similarities across the board, and the viewer is still convinced that it's still Chiron throughout the whole movie. And the casting department did a really good job because all 3 of them do kind of look like one another. Jenkins used the same policy for the 3 actors that play Kevin, Chiron's childhood friend, those 3 being Jaden Piner, Jarrell Jerome, and Andre Holland. The character of Chiron speaks very little throughout the film. Again, he is a closed-off individual. He's not a regular participant of society. He's struggling with a lot, his mother's drug problems, his sexuality. He's bullied in school. So these actors had to emote mostly on looks and expressions alone. And the way their dialogue is written, when Chiron finally does decide to speak in the film, it's incredibly impactful and it's sometimes jarring. Naomi Harris plays Chiron's mother. She shot all her scenes within a 3-day period while promoting the film Spectre due to a problem with her work visa. Harris is British. She was reluctant to play this character because she had always wanted to portray a woman in a positive light, but when she learned she was playing a character that had roots in the real life of the director and writers, she went for it. This was the first acting role of Janelle Monáe, who plays Teresa. Her primary work as a recording artist and a music producer. And finally, Mahershala Ali plays Juan, the drug dealer who acts as a father figure to young Chiron in Act 1. There's an amazing complexity to this character because he is so warm and generous and the most positive influence in young Chiron's life, but at the end of the day, he's a drug dealer. And to add to that, he sells drugs to Chiron's mother, so he is responsible for making Chiron's life better, but he's also indirectly responsible for making it worse. I did want to show a little clip from the film. This is the end of Act 1, and this is all sort of where everything comes to a boil for both Juan and Chiron, but in a way it's also a turning point for both characters. So Ethan, if you could cue that clip up.
Saw your mom last night.
I hate her.
Yeah, I bet you do. I hated my mom, too. I miss her like hell now, though. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
What's a faggot?
A faggot is a word used to make gay people feel bad.
Am I a faggot?
No. No. You could be gay, but you never let nobody call you no faggot. I mean, unless...
How do I know?
You just do. I think.
You'll know when you know.
Hey. You ain't gotta know right now. All right? Not yet.
Do you sell drugs?
Yeah.
And my mom. She do drugs, right?
Yeah.
And that's like his first full sentence. Am I a? So you can understand it's almost like, you know, your baby's first word like being a swear. It shakes you up a little bit, and you can definitely see like Juan's like shaking. He's hanging his head in shame because he's almost become like a father figure to this kid, and in this scene he's essentially disappointed and let down his son. So that's just one example of what makes this film so complex. The film was shot in roughly 25 days in South Florida in late 2015. About 80% of the film was shot on location and in the same neighborhood Jenkins and McCraney grew up in. The crew had a lot of concerns over shooting there. It's a very poverty-stricken area, and apparently one of the most poverty-stricken areas in the United States. And as the film displays, it's a very rough neighborhood. However, once word got out Barry Jenkins was from there, the locals couldn't have been better and treated the production with the utmost respect. Many shots in the film are head-on close-ups of the actors to sort of convey that the camera is in between two characters, and it's sort of a way to help bring the audience deeper into the story. The scene where Juan, I got a laser pointer, I should use it. The scene where Juan teaches young Chiron how to swim in the film, Mahershala Ali is really teaching Alex Hilbert how to swim. The poor kid didn't know how to swim before production started. Moonlight opened in U.S. cinemas on November 18th, 2016. On a budget of roughly $4 million, the film made over $65 million at the U.S. box office. The worldwide box office. The film has a 98% certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. For comparison, La La Land has 92. Both films were named among the top films of 2016 by the American Film Institute. Moonlight was nominated for 6 Golden Globes, but only won for Best Motion Picture Drama. It was nominated for 8 Oscars at last year's Academy Awards and won 3. Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor for Mahershala Ali, and yes, Best Picture. And now today, this great film is only really known as the film that actually won Best Picture or the film that took the Oscar from La La Land. And again, these two films will be tied together forever in history. I know I'm not helping. All because one man was too busy tweeting instead of doing his job. I think we have a picture of that man actually tweeting. I think so. There he is. That's like the same slide from last time. Don't forget his face. Who knows? You know, maybe 20, 30 years from now, maybe people will only remember La La Land. Maybe people will only remember Moonlight. But I hope now, at the end of all this, I've introduced you to 2 wonderful films that deserve high recognition in their own rights. I encourage you all to give Moonlight a viewing at some point. You might end up liking it more than La La Land. You might end up liking it less than La La Land. You might end up hating both. You might end up loving both. I like both films, but if you know me and my body of work, you can probably guess which one I love more. I did say a few weeks ago that I do believe these films share some similarities, and for the most part, I was exaggerating. But I believe both films, in some respects, deal with the theme of identity. The main characters in each film, be they a struggling actress or a jazz artist or just a young man in school, struggle to be who they really are and who they want to be because hardships are thrown in front of them left and right, and there are a lot of outside influences keeping them down. But in turn, there are also good folks who help them through their struggles and help them achieve their goals and stay true to themselves. So at the end of the day, while there's a lot of different reasons why, maybe there's a common reason after all why both films had their titles announced at last year's Oscar ceremony. But only one title was on the envelope, and that title was Moonlight.